Okay, you guys, I need help because did Bobby die? Hello, darlings, and welcome to Performance Perspective, where we watch different performances and then we share our perspectives. If you're new here, hi, I'm Carolyn. You could call me Care. And if you're not, welcome back. Now, today, a lot of fun. You guys got to vote what musical was next for us to watch and to talk about. And I put out musicals that I've never seen before. And the one that won is Company. So I watched the 2011 production of Company, and boy, oh boy, did I have a good time. Okay, so let's get into it, okay? Company is a groundbreaking musical that boasts the genius of Stephen Sondheim's music and lyrics alongside George Firth's storytelling. When it first hit the stage in 1970, it absolutely smashed expectations, bagging an impressive 6 Tony Awards out of a whopping 14 nominations. What makes Company so special is how it dives into the nitty-gritty of modern love, marriage, and sometimes messy world of divorce. It's a pioneer among musicals for its bold take on these themes, doing so without following a traditional storyline. Instead, we get to peek into the life of Bobby, a bachelor, through a series of snapshots shared with his married friends during his 35th birthday bash. It's a brilliant, unconventional look at relationships that still resonates today. Now, I will say when watching this musical, I was actually comparing my relationship with my husband to each of the couples, which I feel that if I was single, I would have been comparing myself to Bobby. So that was something interesting that I caught while watching the musical. It also made me think about how many times my husband and I would hang out with like one mutual friend that was single. And I always thought to myself that they shouldn't feel like the third wheel, because if anything, our attention was all about them. How are they doing? What's going on? But then again, I guess it's not fair for me to say that's how they felt. In the bustling heart of New York City, Robert, who everyone loves but somehow remains single, is about to hit 35. His inner circle, a vibrant mix of married and engaged buddies like Joanne and Larry, Peter and Susan, Harry and Sarah, David and Jenny, and the duo Paul and Amy, decide to throw him a surprise birthday bash. Despite the candles on his cake stubbornly staying lit, his friends assure him his wishes will still come true. But Bobby's got a secret. He didn't wish for anything. For him, these friends are everything. Now, I don't think that the scenes happen in chronological order, so what I want to do is go through each couple, then go through the ex-girlfriends that Bobby dated, then talk about Bobby, because in a way, it's almost like that expression, you learn a lot about a person based on the friends they hang out with. So interestingly, we learn a lot about Bobby through his friends. First up, we meet Sarah and her husband Harry, who are battling their own vices. Harry's is with alcohol and Sarah's is with food. Their playful bickering quickly turns into a mock karate match, leaving us wondering if it's all in good fun. Slipping into the role of Sarah, Marta Plimpton totally stole the show for me. She was hands down the funniest character, and I felt a real connection with her portrayal. And can we talk about the absolute surprise of seeing Stephen Colbert as Harry? That casting choice was a curveball I did not see coming, but wow, he nailed it. The cast was filled with unexpected delights, but Colbert's performance, he to me was such a highlight. Now, I will say that this is the couple that I actually see my husband and I are most similar to. The way that she said baked potato.
A baked potato with sour cream and chives. Doesn't that just make you writhe?
No lie, all I could think about was like, oh my gosh, yes, you take the baked potato, you cut it open, you kind of take the fork and you kind of do this with the potato inside the peel, and then you add the butter so then it gets all melted in there, and then you put cheese in it, and then you add the bacon to it, and then you add more cheese to it, and then with the sour cream, boom, and then the scallions and stuff. Oh my gosh, I was like, Sarah, you and me, like, I totally get it. I loved how they captured this couple's dynamic. It's like you're seeing them through a dual lens. On one side, they could seem like they're not the healthiest pair, lacking trust and constantly competing, but flip the perspective and you see something beautiful. They're just super honest with each other, keeping it real about their flaws. It's not about competing, it's about pushing each other to be the best versions of themselves. They thrive on criticism because honestly, why would you want a partner who sugarcoats the truth when you could be growing and doing better? The song Sorry Grateful really struck a chord with me. Harry along the guys dives into the bittersweet reality of marriage. It's this complex mix that somehow changes your entire world and yet leaves everything untouched, filling you with both gratitude and a hint of regret. Listening to it, I couldn't help but tear up because it's so true. When you found your person, you navigate through these whirlwind emotions together. You might find yourself feeling frustrated, yet your love for them doesn't wane. Or maybe you're content in solitude, but their absence leaves a void. Stephen Sondheim has this incredible gift for transforming what might seem like a jumble of emotions into profound music. He captures the indescribable essence of marriage and puts into words and melodies, making this not just understandable but deeply felt. Also, how embarrassing is it that I cried to Stephen Colbert singing this song? Like, this was not on my bingo card. Next, we dive into Peter and Susan's world. Bobby's just chilling with them on their terrace. Everything looks picture perfect, but then, boom, they drop the bombshell. They're getting a divorce. Honestly, this couple throws me for a loop. It's like they're a metaphor for those couples obsessed with appearing perfect to the outside world, where aesthetics trump everything else. But I'm a firm believer that it takes a village to keep a marriage or family strong. Sure, sometimes that very community might be what strains a relationship, but I didn't get the vibe that was the issue for Peter and Susan. There was something in the musical that alludes that Peter might be either bi or gay, and I think possibly that because he might have been pushed to be closeted and things like that, if he was more open, maybe he would have been in an entirely different relationship. But I don't know, that was sort of the interpretation that I was getting out of that. But I would love to know, like, what did you think of Peter? Craig Burko took on the role of Peter with Jill Pace shining as Susan. Their big moment together felt brief and they kind of faded into the background for me as the show went on. They did bring up the quirky dynamics of divorce. Later in the storyline, we find out Peter jetted off to Mexico to finalize their divorce, but in a twist that feels straight out of a rom-com, he ends up calling Susan and she flies out to join him for what turns into a vacation. Even though they've officially split, they're still sharing the same space.
I still have responsibilities. I got Susan and the kids to take care of. Would never leave them.
So are you considering getting married again?
Married? Oh no, we tried that. Thank you very much.
Oh, we're so much more married now than when we were married.
It's puzzling, right? They're still all in when it comes to each other and their family, yet the marriage itself is off the table. Shifting gears to Jenny and David, Robert's the one who introduces them to the world of marijuana. At first glance, Jenny struck me as the, type A personality, seemingly all about control. Yet as the scene unfolded, she began to seem more liberated, maybe a side effect of the marijuana. David, on the other hand, started off as this calm, grounded presence, but then he dropped hints about missing the single life, which was a total 180 from my first impression. Jennifer Laura Thompson steps into Jenny's shoes while John Cryer takes on the role of David. And yes, John Cryer's casting caught me by surprise. Known mostly for his sitcom roles, transitioning to theater doesn't seem like a huge leap, but it's still an interesting choice. Jenny seems more invested in the idea of Robert settling down, but it's clear he might not be ready to marry. Robert does go into about dating his exes, and I promise we will get to that later, but there was something about the ending of this scene that made me feel sick, and I want to know how you took this. As we're nearing the scene's close, Jenny's asking Bobby for another round with a joint, but David's quick to shut that down, not just once but repeatedly. Then it's like we stepped into a scene from Star Wars with David pulling a Jedi mind trick, suddenly insisting she doesn't want another after all. David gives a half-hearted green light for Bobby and Jenny to proceed without him, yet Jenny sticks to her new stance. This whole exchange left me and Bobby scratching our heads in confusion, but then, with Jenny out of earshot, David lets Bobby in on the secret. Jenny's whole about face was just a performance, a peculiar way of showing her love. I don't know, I was just left confused because was David right that Jenny was just faking it and he was just giving her the okay, like, I love you, you don't have to fake it, I understand that you were doing this for me? Or, this is how I truly felt, was that he doesn't allow Jenny to be Jenny, and so she, conforms into what he expects his wife to be. I don't know. It feels so off-putting, and I don't know if that was the point or not. We dive into Amy and Paul's story right at the brink of their wedding day. After sharing years together under the same roof, Amy is suddenly hit with a wave of cold feet in the midst of a full-blown panic. There is something I appreciate about Amy and Paul's relationship because this is the first time where we see the woman not necessarily wanting to be married. Usually with the husbands, it's either that they wish that they were single again or they're happy to kind of leave their wives to have that freedom. But again, very interesting to see Amy be the one to go through this and that it's Paul that is so excited for them to be committed to each other. Katie Finneran lights up the stage as Amy, with Aaron Lazar bringing Paul to life. In a moment of sheer panic, Amy decides she can't go through with the wedding, but then in a totally unexpected twist, Robert's comforting words accidentally morph into a marriage proposal. This shocks Amy back into sense. She suddenly sees everything she's risking and makes a beeline for Paul, now with zero doubts about marrying him. In a heart-to-heart with Bobby, she drops a truth bomb. While her biggest fear is jumping into marriage, his is the complete opposite. The fear of never making that leap. Oh, this is the moment I've been eagerly anticipating because come on, it's Patti LuPone we're talking about. I had initially pegged her character as flying solo, but Patti breathes life into Joanne with Larry, played by Jim Walton, by her side. This duo invites Robert to a nightclub, setting the scene for an unforgettable night. While Larry hits the dance floor, Joanne and Robert find themselves at a table, diving deep into their drinks. Joanne doesn't hold back, accusing Robert of living life from the sidelines and continuously poking at Larry with her sharp words. When Larry swings back from his tirade, he absorbs Joanne's tipsy tirade without a word of protest, later confiding in Robert that his love for her hasn't waned in the slightest. From what I gathered through the show is that Joanne has gone through multiple divorces and that Larry keeps being tested and he's not going anywhere, which, this is gonna be so random. This reminded me of a psychic reading I had, and I remember her because I was like, when will I find love and all this stuff? And I remember her saying to me that the person that you end up with is not going anywhere. Like there will be times when you're like, can you go? And he's like, no, or he's just there. That was the main phrase she kept saying, is that he'll just be there. He'll just be there. And I know that sounds silly, but it is something that I'm like, yeah, the person that loves you will just be there. Like even when you're like, you're an independent person, you do your own thing, and then they're just there. You don't have to ask anything of them. They're just there. She was also someone that said that I would meet my person when I was 28, and that was spot on. That was true. And yeah, he won't go away. As Larry heads off to settle the bill, Joanne doesn't miss a beat, boldly suggesting to Robert that they start an affair, promising him she'll take care of him. Robert's response, "But who will I take care of?" catches not only him by surprise, but also leaves Joanne taken aback, recognizing it as a significant moment of clarity for him. Robert's been open to the idea of marriage and commitment, yet he's plagued by the question, what do you get? When Larry comes back, Robert, now visibly agitated, repeats, "What do you get?" Joanne, with a hint of triumph, remarks, "I just did someone a big favor." She and Larry then leave while Robert stays behind, lost in a whirlwind of frustration and introspection. And I have no idea what just happened, because was Joanne being serious about the affair? Was that a test? And I don't know what the favor was that she just did. What was it that Bobby just learned? Because I learned nothing. I was so confused, I'm not gonna lie. After getting a glimpse of Bobby through his interactions with the couples, it's time to dive into this world from a different angle, his past relationships. Bobby isn't exactly against the idea of tying the knot, but his history with his 3 ex-girlfriends, April, Kathy, and Marta, brings a new layer to the story. They step into the spotlight with a musical number that perfectly captures their collective frustration over his reluctance to commit. First up, we've got April, the flight attendant. Bobby intriguingly labels as odd. Christina Hendricks brings her to life on stage. Like, excuse me? I swear, the cast in this production blows my mind, and she was perfect for this role. We see Robert and April end a date with a cozy nightcap at his place. She's taken aback by the warm, inviting vibe of his apartment. As they find themselves sitting on the bed, Robert's smooth moves are in full swing, subtly aiming to charm her further. Amidst this, April opens up sharing a poignant memory about a butterfly's death that touched her. In response, Robert spins a quirky, clearly made-up story, hoping to weave a mood that might tip the scales in favor of his seductive intentions. This to me was a relationship that was being treated like a situationship. Although April may not be the smartest, she's still a person, you know?
I'm a living thing too, you shithead.
I think this relationship was just physical for Bobby, so I can understand why this wasn't the one for him to propose and have a life with. But now we have Kathy, who is seen as the best. Just a fun fact, in several versions of the show, including the original Broadway run, there's this unique moment where Bobby's night with April is visually echoed by a solo dance from Kathy. I find it pretty fascinating, yet it leaves me scratching my head. It feels a bit out of left field, especially since Marta seems to be MIA during the sequence. Moving on, there's this scene where Bobby and Kathy catch up, and it's almost like you can feel they were destined for each other. Instead of hitting up some lively bash, Bobby opts to spend his time with Kathy in a serene park. She remarks on the beauty of the finding such a peaceful spot amidst the hustle and bustle of the city. It's one of those moments that really makes you pause and appreciate the quieter, more intimate times. Now, you've heard me talk about the cast and things like that, but get this, Chrissy Whitehead was actually one of my dance teachers when I was in college. So seeing her, I was like, what is she doing here? She, by the way, she is amazing. If you find her on TikTok, she always has the best motivation as far as like to life, to dance. Like she really, to me, was the type of teacher that was just so passionate about life in general. And then she was able to do that through dance.
And there's a lyric in there in What I Did for Love that says the gift was ours to borrow. The gift was ours to borrow. This is a gift to borrow, y'all. I don't dance like I did 15, 16 years ago. I dance differently. But I don't do that. Y'all dance like that now.
There's a documentary of when they were doing Chorus Line, and she's in it and she ends up being cast in the role. And so her story is just so beautiful, and she's a beautiful person. So I recommend her just in general. When they meet up in the park, it's clear Bobby and Kathy have transitioned from past flames to friends. They share this bittersweet revelation that back in the day, each of them had actually considered marriage, but neither had a clue about the other's feelings. It had me and Bobby on the same wavelength, wondering if marriage was on their minds, why did they end things? This opens up the intriguing possibility, could this mean they're meant to be after all? The answer is no, because she's moving. And she says something along the lines like, I'm like this park, we don't belong here, or we're out of place. And it makes me look at this relationship that Bobby was, well, because they were perfect for each other. Like they seemed like they were meant to be, but it might be a situation of right person, wrong time. Next up, we've got Marta, whom Bobby labels as fun. She belts out this love-hate ballad to New York, a performance beautifully delivered by Anika Nani Rose. Yes, the actual Disney princess. Honestly, I'm kind of on the fence about Marta. It's a puzzle why things didn't pan out between her and Bobby. I was actually wondering if there was an age gap between her and Bobby. So could it be that Bobby only saw her as a fun distraction rather than someone to consider for the long haul? Just a heads up, my husband's home and he's making lunch, so if you hear him, ignore him. I know I do. But anyways, I actually am confused on why Marta and Bobby didn't work. The only thing I can make up in my head is that she's younger, and so he didn't take her seriously, and that's why he just labeled her as fun and kind of put her to the side until she was like, well, he doesn't think of me as serious, so then she moves on. I don't know. What did you guys think? But anyways, we talked about the friends, we talked about the exes, and now it's time to talk about Bobby. Throughout the musical, it's like a running theme where Bobby's friends keep throwing him these surprise birthday parties. He's hit 35, but when it comes to figuring out the timeline of his other birthdays and the gaps between them, I'm left scratching my head. And oh, his candle blowing skills, definitely not his strong suit. Bobby is definitely cherished as a fantastic friend, yet there's this underlying envy from his pals for his single status. His journey through the musical paints a picture of someone eager to get hitched, but given the messy dynamics of the couples around him, you got to wonder why he's so keen on marriage with all of those glaring red flags around him. Speaking of red flags, it's pretty telling how Bobby casually mentions to each wife how he wished they were his wife. He even goes as far as proposing to Amy on her wedding day, not out of love, but more like grasping at convenience. The only exception in his circle is Joanne. He never expresses any marital wishes to her. Instead, it's she who flips the script, suggesting they kickstart an affair. What are you making?
Salad.
And what's in the air fryer?
Chicken.
Oh. You're not gonna bless me?
Bless you.
Neil Patrick Harris is the one that plays Bobby, and even though I go back and forth about how I feel about Bobby, Neil is a fantastic performer. He was so good, I forgot he was gay. Like, hear me out, hear me out. In one scene, Peter throws a curveball at Robert, asking him if he's ever had a homosexual experience. Turns out both of them have. Then Peter drops another hint, suggesting maybe there's a chance for an encounter between him and Robert. But Robert, he just nervously chuckles and brushes off the whole conversation like it's all one big joke. So in this production, when Peter asks Bobby if he's ever had a homosexual experience, everyone starts laughing. And I was sitting there thinking, okay, what did I miss? Like, I don't understand why everyone's laughing. What's the joke here?
Bob, have you ever had a homosexual experience?
Then it clicked, like, oh my gosh, yeah, my bad. He only has like the most gorgeous husband in the world. And also, did you watch the Netflix series he's in? Absolutely loved it. But anyways, okay. All right, putting the focus back to Bobby, something I was wondering was, did Bobby actually want marriage, or maybe he just wanted a marriage? Because every time he talks about marriage, it's very surface level. After Joanne hints she's done Bobby a massive favor, he launches into Being Alive. It's a pivotal moment where Bobby's tune shifts, revealing a deep-seated yearning for a genuine connection, craving for love despite his complications, and a longing to find someone to brave the roller coaster of life with. Then bam, we're at yet another surprise birthday bash for Bobby, but the twist, it's on us this time. His buddies have been hanging around for 2 hours and Bobby's nowhere in sight. As they start to pack it in, there's this sense of optimism in the air about Bobby's future in love, sending him well wishes for his birthday. Cue Bobby showing up solo, flashing a smile, and finally blowing out his candles. And I'm like, did Bobby die? Okay, hear me out. He just sang this song about being alive and wanting to find that special person, only to end up alone. And I was, so when I saw it, I was like, oh my gosh, Bobby died. Like, he couldn't handle it because he thinks that he'll never be alive. Now, thinking about it, one of the things that was happening through the musical was that Bobby wasn't able to blow out the candles, hence his wish wouldn't come true, or he didn't make that wish. And now for the first time he was able to come out and blow all the candles. So is that supposed to make us feel that he is going to finally find love, or is this just love for being alone? I don't know. I thought he died. Anyways, darlings, that's it for today's episode. I had so much fun. You can vote for the next musical in the community tab. I think I'm gonna do a theme for this one. And yeah, I would love to know, what are your thoughts about Company? Did you look at it through the perspective of the couples? Did you look at it through the perspective of the ex-girlfriends, or even just looking at it as if you were Bobby yourself? I'd love to know. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you love talking about musicals and performances and things like this. And without further ado, take care, darling.